Hey, welcome to My Mama Summer. My name is Aimee Devlin. I'm an unconventional millennial mother living abroad, building a business and raising children while stepping into who she's meant to be. This podcast is an audio version of my newsletter, which you can find at mymamasummer.com. The episodes are short, wholehearted reflections of my life as a mother, business owner, and everyday human committed to being the best she can be. Pop in your headphones, grab a cuppa and a cookie, and take this time to just be with me. Today I'm sharing with you a flashback from 2017, and this episode is a reflection on my time during my Saturn return. For those of you who follow astrology, you may understand what a Saturn return is. For those who don't, you can Google it to learn about it. I'm not an astrologer, so I won't go into immense detail about it, but from my personal experience, it's a time of unrest that happens between the ages of 27 and 29, and it's a time where we are called back to our purpose, our path. If we're living a life off that path, we will be smacked about, essentially, as a wake-up call to ask ourselves the right questions and to get on the path that we're supposed to be on. And I experienced a very, very challenging Saturn return in my life when I was 27, and I wrote this article reflecting on my Saturn return in 2017. So it's now 2024. We are now 12 years after my Saturn return. Life has changed a lot. I'm now a mother. My life is beautiful. But even just reading this article and reading it aloud to you made me remember how dark this time was in my life. And at the same time, out of that darkness came all of the good that I see in my world today. And often it's not until much later when we're able to see the lessons and the learnings of a time that is challenging for us. For me, obviously, I wrote this article 5 years after I actually experienced this period in my life. So I had some time to reflect. I dove into some myths, such as the story of Inanna, who is the ancient Sumerian goddess who ventured through the underworld and emerged fully integrated and empowered. So she provides a beautiful archetype to describe this process of going into ourselves and not being afraid of the darkness, not being afraid to look at what's there and to integrate it. Some people call this shadow work, but for me, it's an integral part of life. Anytime we are avoiding the depths or not wanting to look at our shadow, we get stuck in avoidance. And when we do that, we just continue to perpetuate the cycles and the patterns that aren't serving us. What I will do in the future is write an update to this, almost like a part 2 of the next mountains, the next layers that I stripped off. Because we're essentially always going through this cycle of emerging and venturing into the underworld and emerging and venturing into the underworld. To me, that's what life is all about. That's what growth is all about. That's where our strength and our wholeness comes from. It doesn't come from pretending everything's fine all the time. So I hope you enjoy this reflection. It's an insight into my tumultuous Saturn return and everything I was forced to strip away, or I chose to strip away. Who knows what it was? Let me know on the other side how you enjoyed this. And I'd also love to know what you experienced during the ages of 27 to 29 in your own life. Did you too take an adventure into the underworld? Let me know, drop a comment, and keep the conversation flowing. Enjoy. For those first few moments, I'm not quite sure where I am. I hear a tapping at the window which awakens my consciousness and brings me back to the soft, warm bed I sleep in. It's a bird, tap, tap, tapping on my window. It pulls me swiftly back to earth from my velvety dream state, and as I descend, my thoughts remind me of my descent to the underworld. It was 5 long, slow years ago that I awoke with a tangible feeling of disgust for my life. It was inexplicable, a sign of madness even, not something I could easily articulate for those who sought to understand me. I tried a couple of times but wasn't heard. I was instead reminded to be grateful for all I had, to be fearful of what I could lose, and to pull myself into line. I had no guru, no teacher, no ally to explain the magnitude or meaning of what lay ahead, or to pave the way with symbol or expectation. All I felt was something stirring deep within my weary self. I was forced to go it alone. I found the courage within me to forge ahead, women of old paving the way for me, though I didn't know this yet. I drew from an unknown force that could see what my hackneyed eyes could not. It was my first opportunity to trust the divine guidance I did not know existed and to call upon the knowledge buried within me. The grueling task before me camouflaged with roses, luring me forth into battle I was unprepared for. I didn't know just how deep I'd need to dive. All I knew is I had to go. They say for some, the descent involves some external and internal cleansing. For me, that was a charming understatement. It all had to go. I placed everything out on my metaphorical and literal lawn for the taking. I could not stand the sight, smell, or memory of anything that was mine. In a way, this led me to even further loss of capital, loss of worth, but I would not rest until it was all gone. I had to be stripped bare, left naked in the icy depths. There wasn't one thread of life that deserved to come with me. I was so brutally repulsed by it all. My wishes were answered, and then some. First, it was my job. I'd become jaded and bored. My once jovial face could smile no longer. My breath was toxic. I was always one moment away from unfiltered mayhem reaching the ears of those I served. I had no bandwidth for stupidity or rudeness, and rightly so. I'd taken too much already. So the job had to go. One layer dissolved, many to go. Next, it was my relationship, a long-term one at that. Empty and devoid of substance and the richness I now desperately craved, filled only with externality of playthings, security, sameness, and the mundane, like Groundhog Day on steroids. Be gone, I said. I need and am worthy of so much more. Soon, my home was gone. The one true place I'd been able to unleash my creativity. It was not the sanctuary I'd hoped it'd be. Though it was my creation, I'd drawn every wall, looked over the plan and designed and planted the luscious garden. Still, it wasn't me. It was tiles and concrete, coloured with a stark palette of grey, much like my life at the time. The inviting, luxurious blue of the swimming pool never quite delivered the relaxation it promised. Not even the flowers in bloom could save me. I poured what I naively thought was my heart and soul into that place, but all it returned was emptiness. So I let that go too. Up next was my town, my city of home, which I felt was a curse, so barren and flat, a symbol of all that I wasn't. No longer could I take the cookie-cutter houses, the concrete shopping malls, and the monstrous number of cars on the ever-widening, always broken roads. My soul shuddered every time I left the house. I longed for connection, yet sought solitude. My life was a paradox. I had it all, and yet nothing. I knew I could never find what I needed there. I felt as though no one should live in that lonesome city. It was so devoid of life, maintained artificially by those who lived there. I was sure it would return to desert once they all woke up and left, like I did. It was then my family, those who loved me most. But love isn't synonymous with understanding. Those who thought they knew me would never understand what I had to do and why. Even I didn't know the answers to these questions, so how was I to explain myself to them? I had gone mad, or so I and they thought. I later realized perhaps the dreadful truth was that they were mad and I was sane. My friends relinquished themselves from here. Admittedly, I had fled and knew few would remain. Out of hundreds, only one or two made it through. It was as though my life continued as theirs froze in time. An uncomfortable clash of sameness and change. I became weary as we quickly ran out of conversation, speaking of the same things, the same people, the same events, in perpetuity, all of which mattered little to me. I couldn't feign interest for long. I began to ignore them all, and before long, no one called, even if I wanted them to. I still wasn't happy with losing so much. I wouldn't stop until it was all burned to the ground. The nest egg destined for building my brand new life was soon lost as I decided to build a new business with a man on a whim. That wasn't to be, it was purely an excruciating lesson in the important creation of strong, healthy boundaries. But it would be a long time until I realized that, and so I lost all my money on top of all else. This man took everything else up for the taking, namely what little confidence and self-esteem I had. His scathing words and snide remarks weren't always blunt, but hidden in niceties and compliments, and drove in with a freshly sharpened sword. I had never met someone who I despised and yet thought I loved, who could make me question all that I was, to apologize for being me, or being fat, or for the way I ate, for existing, or speaking loud, or at all. The constant stream of pseudo-spiritual, New Age nonsense that left his mouth ensured I knew I was 100% at fault for this all. I hope never to see this man again for his sake and mine, yet I thank him dearly for the backhanded wisdom he so gleefully dumped in my starry-eyed lap. And so here I was with all that I'd asked for. No job, no relationship, no roof over my head or city to call home, no family beside me, no friends to call, no money, no confidence, and no self-esteem. What else was there left to lose? At each stop I had stripped off a layer, a burden, an untruth so heavy I could not take another step with it on my back. Each step grew easier, bringing with it new challenges, new ways of being, new ways of seeing, and new ways of being seen. I had to relearn what and who I was. I didn't know the girl underneath. I was desperately afraid to meet her. She now stood, so naked, so timid and small, so scared and emotional, so open to all. I had not weathered the storm. I had been violently crushed, blown away, and spat out by it. And when I awoke, I found myself on my knees, begging to be heard, desiring to be answered. I wondered if it was possible to live again, to be truly whole. It took considerable time for the darkness to lift, the light finally bringing warmth to my longing soul, breathing new life into the colours, the scents, and the experiences of my world, and bringing forth the people I had longed for all this time. Though I was viewed as mad by many, I realised it wasn't me who was mad to ask and receive all I dreamed of. It was they who remained too small, too scared, too fearful of asking for all they desired and deserved. It was me whose calls were answered, and whose life is now beautifully whole. If you enjoyed this episode and like reading as much as you do listening, I would love to welcome you as another subscriber to my newsletter. Head on over to mymamasummer.com to subscribe and let me know what you loved most about this episode. I love hearing your feedback. It's my favorite part of sharing what's on my heart. I'll see you over there. Have a beautiful day.